Their reach extends to far northeast Minnesota and increasingly to other parts of the state. And that's the beauty now of technology and big middle mile networks, is that providers can reach out. They don't have to plow their own fiber from here to there. They can hop on different networks and provide service any part of the state or country, I guess, for that matter. Tim Mergen is with us, and he's from Meeker County Electric Cooperative, and they're a brand new ISP, just at their ribbon cutting celebration, which was had the governor up in a bucket truck and flipping light switches, and they had pancake flippers who were flipping pancakes from long distances, so that was kind of a fun community event. They had a great turnout, so people were very excited to be buying their services, and I think the electric co-op staff were pretty excited to be engaged in this exciting new community initiative. Then we have Ryan Severson from Rosso Electric, and they are also now engaged in broadband deployment. They've been successful in getting some funding that's helped them to partner with another telephone company to deploy service up in. We've been to Lake of the Woods and the far northwest part of the state. You know there's a lot of challenges there in terms of population density and so on. So it's exciting to have this panel here. We're going to have 3 different perspectives about their path to partnerships. And I'm just going to start with Joe Buttweiler. Joe's going to come up and give us about 10 minutes of his partnership. Is that too little or too much, Joe?
I don't know.
Okay.
So the request was to talk about CTC's build-out philosophy, and I think our build-out philosophy probably changes day by day and year by year. But I just have a few quick slides, kind of starting with the smallest individual person requesting service, just one location, and then kind of scaling up from there, and just walking you through some thoughts that we have and how we do things at CTC. So these are kind of at a high level the things that we look at. We look at annual capital budget and look at where we want to grow. That's primarily here in the Brainerd Lakes area. Just edging out, growing the network slowly and steadily. We use a tool called Crowdfiber that I have some slides on that I'll talk about, and we use that here locally, and we also use it with communities across the state, helping them determine if working with CTC is the best fit for them, and or how much demand there is for services within their community. We will do strategic builds into towns if there's a specific business or anchor tenant that wants service, which then enables us in the future to grow out and branch out because of that one single location. And then we apply for pretty much every state and federal grant funding opportunity there is, hoping that the numbers pan out, and as you apply for more, you at least get one every once in a while. So this is our newest way of just quickly working with a single requested customer. We do it all in GIS. So if you call CTC today and say, hey, I'm near your fiber network, can I get service? Our person on the phone right then and there will measure it out and calculate a cost and tell you if there's going to be a cost associated with the building to you or not, and we'll make the determination right there and then on the spot and schedule it all within the 5 or 10 minute initial phone call, which is a much more efficient way of doing things for those one-off requests than how we used to do it, which was we'd take your information, we'd send it over to the engineering department, they'd go look at it, and then a few days later we'd get back to you. So technology's helped us improve that process greatly, and really hones in on one of our key focuses at CTC, which is the member experience and providing them the best experience that we possibly can. Moving into our Crowdfiber tool. So this is like a demand aggregation tool. And this example is from Franconia Township, which is in southern Chisago County. And lot of times we talk about, or we hear about anecdotally how broadband deployments are like rural electric deployments, and there are some parallels. Franconia in this instance was interesting because they, locally, the citizens likened broadband deployment to the railroad. And Franconia, the township residents, way back in the day, grouped together and encouraged the railroad to come to Franconia, and now they're doing a similar thing with broadband. So we set up a splash page for them. It's our website, goctc.com/Franconia. They land here, they learn a little bit about what the project is doing. They enter their address at the bottom of the screen, and then it rolls them into a survey. So this was what we're doing here with Franconia, is gathering information about how interested are people in the township in getting broadband services, what do they think about their current service, and importantly to both the township supervisors and the CTC is what level of investment are the citizens of the township willing to make to bring service to their area. So we gather all that data. Then in the lower right, residents can track how many people have signed up and taken the survey. And then we provide all that data back to the township, and eventually they make a decision whether they would like to move forward with helping to fund a project or not, or what level of investment they could bring to a project or not. And so we've used this now in quite a few locations in Minnesota, and it's been a really nice resource for us at CTC. A lot of times, we find that this is just a great starting point for a community to really get a conversation going locally, for people to understand, to bring on others into the broadband conversation to determine if we should bring services there. Internally at CTC then, and we can share this out, is we just get a nice map showing of all the locations who have registered on the crowd fiber site, so we can see if interest is grouped to a specific area within a community or if it's spread across the entire community. Helps us with some planning and some examples of some community and anchor business builds. The city of Little Falls, they had some workforce business retention issues, so we built a network with the city of Little Falls, and they financed it, we leased it, and then at about 8 years into that project, we purchased the network from the city. In the city of Aiken, that was a strategic business build. We branched out about 9 miles from our network into the city of Aiken due to some business demands there, and continue to slowly grow that network. I mentioned Franconia and Chisago Lakes Township. We've worked with those townships, and we have a grant application pending with the state of Minnesota, the Border to Border program right now, that we're very hopeful will get awarded. Then we have utility partnerships with Arrowhead Electric, Mille Lacs Energy Cooperative, and Cooperative Power. And then the city of Long Prairie was looking for a network. Again, this is a similar model to Little Falls, in which the city issued general obligation tax abatement bonds, provided that capital to CTC so we could build a network, lease that network for them, and at some point in the future we'll end up purchasing the network for them. Grants, as I mentioned, we apply for every bit of federal funding that there is, knowing that we're not always going to be on the winning side of the awards, but it's just our philosophy to put all the time and energy that we can into trying to get those scarce resources. So the left picture is kind of some areas we have in the Brainerd Lakes area. We have a border-to-border grant pending right now. The lower right is the RUS Reconnect program. That's on Iron Range between Hibbing and Virginia. And then the upper right, the left area is a RUS Community Connect grant that was awarded to CTC last year. And then the right area is actually a Mille Lacs Energy project that we helped just a little bit with them. And in the East Lake area, that's a Community Connect grant that was just announced and awarded this week. So congratulations, Stacy. Then there was the FCC Cap 2 reverse auction last year. We did a number of areas in that, which is on the left-hand side, some areas south of Staples, and a few areas north of the Crosby-Ironton area. And then we're anxiously awaiting the next FCC auction, which is coming up, known as the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund, until they maybe change the name again, because they seem to like to do that. So that's a bit about the projects. Of all the projects we have going in the last 2 years, we've have about $46 million of projects kind of in the hopper, and to date about 6 million of them have been awarded. So you can see there's a big disparity there. A lot of them are still pending with the state broadband grant program, so we'll see how that ends up. And just last, our parting kind of thoughts are, we really don't care who owns the fiber asset. We just want to use it to deploy services. That's our philosophy. It's not everyone's philosophy. If your community has a mission and vision that aligns with our co-op mission and vision, then we'll work with you. If we think that our mission or our visions, if we don't think they align, then we're probably not the best fit for you. And that geography really doesn't matter to us. Whether you're located here in the Greater Lakes area or anywhere else in Minnesota, if you need a partner to work with, we're happy to have a conversation with you. And if we don't think we're the right fit, we'll help you find a broadband partner that we think would be a good match for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Up next is Ryan Severson from Rosso Electric.
Good morning, and what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through how it started as an electric cooperative and venturing into serving broadband, and what some of the tasks that we run into, and kind of the process. First of all, here's our, just unveiled about 2 weeks ago, our new logo and title on North Stream Fiber, powered by Rosso Electric. We worked with our G&T, which is our generation transmission cooperative, in Florida Power. They have a full marketing team there, and we leveraged that and worked with them in design. Rosso Electric is electrical distribution cooperative. We incorporated in 1940, so we're just about 80 years old. We serve 6,450 locations and 27 employees. That's including the 2 new hires that we just put on for fiber. We have 1,814 miles of electrical overhead line, 361 miles of underground. We serve, as you can see, the challenge for the broadband, we serve 3 customers per month. How did this all start? In February 2017, we were at the MREA annual meeting, and Dana McKinsey was giving a presentation showing where the black holes, the underserved, unserved areas in Minnesota, and Rosso County was a targeted county. March through November of 17, what did we do? We kind of started the conversation. Let's do a feasibility study. We worked with our local CAP agency, Northwest Community Action, did grant funding, or had grant funding through Rosso County, Northwest Minnesota Foundation, the Blandin Foundation, and also USDA. We used the government agency of the city of Rosso to channel all these funding mechanisms through. We did a couple of surveys that we handled at our Rosso County fairs, fall festivals, and other different community meetings. We focused a meeting in the city of Warroad, city of Rosso. That's kind of the area and rural area that we're going to be serving. And what we found is the need was very real. The interest level was incredible. We didn't have a negative comment. So the opportunities research, we looked at the new market tax credits. What type of internet did we want, or broadband did we want to deploy? Is it wireless? Is it a combination? Is it fiber to the home? We decided to go fiber to the home. Minnesota border-to-border broadband funding, also possible partnerships. And what we did there is we researched some of our local partnerships opportunities with Garden Valley Telephone, Paul Bunyan, Wickstrom Telephone, and decided to move ahead with Wickstrom Telephone. They just make sense. They serve all the way around us, and we can build, they call it GPON system off of their network. Next, we looked into the FCC auction 903, which is the CAP 2. And probably one of our biggest challenges is we work for a board of directors, 9 different districts, and to get them on board and educate them. Obviously, we had to have their support moving forward, and financial support, all of that falls into play with working with the board of directors. So we did a lot of the education process, kind of what the feasibility study would show, what the need was, things like that. So that was a major challenge. To start with, I'll tell you, it was not unanimous to move forward as an electric co-op into a broadband world. But with education and including our directors in meetings and surveys and visiting with people, they could see that the staff was real passionate about this, and the need was definitely there. The FCC auction, I'll just touch a little bit on that. We decided to apply, and that took place in March 2018. The actual reverse auction portion of it was July 21st to August 21st. That was very interesting. Every day in the boardroom, on a Skype type of a connection during the reverse auction. August 28th, we received notice that we had won 4 different census block groups, and those 326 customers, which was $2.08 million to be paid out over a 10-year period. That wasn't the end of the process. You get the award, and then the long form application. We leaned very heavily on our engineers to help with that process, to design things and get a high level look at what this may look like. In February 2019, with the CAP 2, you have to prove financing is available and in place for this project to move forward. So we needed a letter of credit, and during that certification, we also, during that process, we also needed to become an ETC, which is the telephone side of things. May 2019, we received the ready to authorize notice from the FCC. So at this point, we're feeling that we're moving forward. We're gonna get this, and then we still wait for a couple months before our first disbursement. But we did receive our first payment, the first of 120, and they have been coming every month since then. During our engineering of the whole project, we were looking at about a 50-50 build, URD underground process to an aerial process. What we found is we were introduced to a product called Built by AFL, and it's an ADSS product that we can hang right on the poles. Our infrastructure is in place, so we were very interested in this. We made a couple trips out to look at the construction process, how it was built, and we were very impressed. Probably one of the biggest advantages for an electric co-op that we see is we can hang this right in the power space. And what does that mean? We don't have to come down in the comm space on the pole. We can actually put this within 6 inches of our conductors. Typically would be next to your neutral. But we can use our own line crews that we already have in place. Actually, you have to because it's the power space, but it really works well under the roof of our building to be able to use our linemen as they are. And obviously where we're located in northern Minnesota, our digging and things like that, we have a limited construction time. This is going to allow us to be able to build out 12 months out of the year. So yeah, if anyone's interested in looking at that, you have some samples with the ADS cable. Obviously it's a fiber, so it's a glass conductor, and it's strengthened. The strengthening membrane in it is actually Kevlar. It's very light, very impressive, and constructs very, very nicely. So back to the timeline, we received the first payment August of 2019. We hired 2 new employees. Stacy Rose is our fiber service director. She's right out here. And Jeremy Sisler is a fiber technician. So we put some expertise and added a department. We also did a lot of research, like I said, with partnerships and what would make most sense. Probably the biggest challenge in partnership was a cooperative philosophy to a private-owned business philosophy. So our agreement and contract probably took like 18 months for us to work back and forth, and it was all good conversation, but a lot of differences in business philosophy and things like that. So we signed our agreement in August, and we're partnering with Wickstrom Telephone, like I said, and they're located in Carlton. So 32 months from then to now, it's really flown by fast in the sense of that, but there was days that I couldn't get things to happen fast enough. But definitely a challenge, and where are we today? We've applied for the border-to-border grant funding. We hope that we would be awarded that. What does that do for us after the CAF2 award? It really fills in the gaps in areas that we'd like to build out anyway. This would really streamline it and make that happen a lot quicker. From the beginning, our purpose remains the same: to serve our members, not only with electricity, but with the offerings that strengthen our rural community. And when we started, our other goal was to have all 6,500 of our members access to a high-speed internet connection. Thank you.
Next is Tim Irvin from Meteor Company.
Thank you, Bill. What you're going to hear from me is a lot of ditto of what Ryan just said, so I'll just wrap it up now and let Ryan just answer the questions. Yeah, I'm Tim Morgan with Meeker Co-op Light and Power in Litchfield, Minnesota. And I'll make sure I get going the right way here. Like Ryan, I'll run through a little bit of our history as well. We were established in 1935. We serve in the 6 counties. You can see the 6 of them up there, with roughly 75% of all of our members are in Meeker County, but we do get into those 5 bordering counties around us. We again, like Ryan, we have 9 directors, and in August of 2018, we had 28 employees, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. We have about 7,800 member owners. We serve about 9,000 electric services. Obviously, with farms and whatever, you have one particular member that might have more than one electric service, whether it's their home and an irrigation system on a farm or whatever. We have 14 electric substations, 1,935 miles of electric line, and so we're right at about 4 members per mile line. Not very heavily populated as well. We are also in a couple other services. We're part owner of Apartment Security Services, along with a number of other electric co-ops, and also own Star Energy Services with a couple other electric co-ops as well. They do all of our engineering services. And then we've been providing Wild Blue when it came out, Exceed, Viasat, all the satellite stuff as well. And 2015, Blandin meeting. That's the first meeting I was at here. Excuse me. And I'll talk about that more in another minute. In 2016 and 17, we started taking a look at getting fiber to our substations and then to the home. We took a look at that. 2016 and 17, we did 2 feasibility studies in 16 and 17. And those feasibility studies showed us that we could not economically get fiber to every home. It just didn't make sense. So then we went back to the drawing board, came up with this hybrid system. Right at that same time, thanks to Blandin, Meeker County did their own study. And the results of that were just identical to what we had looked at in 2016 and 17, basically saying you just can't feasibly do it, getting fiber in all the homes. So it was nice for them to do this study and basically say the same thing that we were telling our board of directors. So it was just great to have that independent study back our own feasibility study up. We originally started in looking, we wanted to get fiber in all of our substations for smart grid technology. Our board approved going ahead with that in May of last year, and then in June of 2018, they went ahead with our full-blown hybrid system, and I'll talk about that in just a minute as well. So we started in with our fiber build-out to the 14 substations, like I said, for smart grid technology, and then provide high-speed broadband internet service throughout our entire service area. A little bit about the hybrid system. What is it? It's a combination of fiber and wireless, fixed wireless system. So it's a fiber backbone to the substations and then also fiber backbone to our monopoles. And I'll talk about those in a minute as well. But the poles transmit a wireless signal to a device that's attached to the home. And you can see the pole here, for example. And this is the device that's attached to the home or the side of the building or business, and that's what we refer to as a fixed wireless system. Unlike your cell phones, which is a mobile system, you can move around and your cell phone's going to be working, whether you're driving down the road, walking across a park, or whatever. That's a mobile wireless system. This particular system is a fixed wireless system. That is fixed on the house, that is fixed up on a pole. It doesn't move, you can't move it, therefore the term fixed wireless. When we're all said and done, we are figuring we're going to have close to 450 miles of fiber in the ground. We have 47 of those monopoles. They're 120 feet tall out of the ground that we're putting in. And then we're also going to be using 2 existing towers. So there'll be 49 of those fixed monopole systems, if you will, basically about every 5 or 6 miles apart in a radius throughout our entire system. We began construction last year, so a year ago now we began construction. We anticipate, and we're still on that, a 2-year build out, so hoping to be completed by this time next year if everything goes well. And then we actually started hooking up our first customers in July of this year. So a little bit on construction. You know, October in Minnesota is not the ideal time to start construction, but we made a decision we were going to start last fall rather than waiting till spring, and knowing how ugly last winter and last spring was, I'm glad we did, because it just wasn't a good spring to be doing a lot of construction. Just real quickly, I'm just going to talk about, you know, all the things that have to happen when you're building a new system out like we did. And, you know, for each one of these that are listed, there's probably another 10, 12 things that are A, B, C, D underneath there that you have to deal with. One of the things that I will mention here is obtain easement. We made a decision that we wanted to put all of our fiber not in the road right-of-ways, but on private property. So we had to go around and get roughly 1,200 easements from our members and non-members to do that. A lot of time and effort went into it, a lot of dollars went into that, but in the end, we think it was the ultimate good, right decision to do. And just real quick on that, our total miles of line, or 1,935 miles of electric line, about 70% of that, maybe 65, 70% of that is overhead, and then the rest of it, 35%, let's say, is underground. For us, on the fiber that we're putting up, that 450 miles is going to be a little bit reversed. We're figuring right in that 65, 70% is going to wind up going underground, and then 35% is going to be attached to our poles, similar to what Ryan was talking about, will be aerial. Just real quick, where you can find us, vibrantbb.net.com or .coop. You can certainly get to our webpage from there. I want to talk a little bit about some of the speeds. This one was a competitor that was on a DSL line. They were paying, I believe, for a 50 down and a 10 up, I believe is what it was. And you can see what they were actually getting on their speed test. They hooked up with a 50 down from us and an 8 or a 10 up with us on a fixed wireless system. And their son was absolutely ecstatic because he could play all his games and could start winning now. So he was absolutely thrilled about that. Our financing is through RUS and CoBank. RUS funded, gave us a loan for our backbone to the substations, and then the rest of it is funded through CoBank. I talked about the employees. A year ago in August, we had 28 employees running our electric co-op business. We are not in a partnership with anybody. Right now, we have 44 employees plus 4 temps. So we've greatly grown in the last year. It's incredible what it takes to make all this happen. I want to mention the Vibrant name. I've been asked several times how we came up with that name, and I have to admit, I talked earlier about 2015 was the first one of these meetings that I was at, and for anybody that might have been there, we got handed a folder right here, and I still have that folder, and it says Vibrant Rural Community, and you can see jotting on here. At that time, I went, wow, that's a perfect name, and I put this away and said, if we ever get in this business, that's what we're going to use for a name. And I wound up writing different variations, scribbling different things on it, but I still have that folder, and thanks to Blandin, that's how we got our name. Bill talked 2 weeks ago tomorrow. We had the governor out, did a ribbon cutting ceremony. It wasn't your traditional ribbon cutting ceremony. We had this sign that we had made. You can see the state of Minnesota outline, the word Vibrant going down. The governor is right here in the bucket truck, and the gentleman next to him here is the former RUS administrator, Ken Johnson. Ken Johnson's the guy that signed off on our project to do the project to the substations, which really allowed us to get going. So we had those two guys plug that sign in up on a tower right outside of our office building, about 30 feet up in the air they were, and it was a really good, fun day, time. Everything went really, really well. I'll just make one other comment on that. The governor's security people were all nervous about him getting up in a bucket truck. I had to assure them, I mean, well before when we were putting this together, they wanted to know what we were going to do, and I said, I want to get him in a bucket truck and do this and whatever. I had to run it through all their security people, and they finally agreed that, yeah, you could go ahead and do that. Okay, so all's well. As the governor's climbing into the bucket truck, one of his security people, and the security is provided by Minnesota State Highway Patrol, the troopers, but one of them came up, put his hand on my shoulder and said, don't mess this up under my watch. So I said, I didn't want to mess it up either, but it all worked out real well. So that's it. That's Meeker Co-op Light and Power story, and similar to Brian, powered by Meeker, or Ryan, powered by Meeker Co-op. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Bill.
So we have time for questions, and appreciate those from the audience. One thing I know that CTC, everything is buried. Then we have different decisions really being made about to bury or not to bury, and from the electric co-ops. And everyone thinks, oh, electric co-ops should do this. They got people with trucks and they got telephone poles, and that's a huge advantage, but a lot of times we end up seeing a lot of it buried.
Just so you know, they're power poles.
Excuse me?
They're power poles.
What did I call them?
Telephone.
Oh. Vertical structures. So, Ryan, do you want to talk about that, a little more about that new product or whatever that makes a big, how that might make a difference in your decision making?
Well, we have not constructed any of that yet, but with the expertise that we have in line crews and the training and things that we put them through, and obviously we constructed all of our infrastructure as it is, we feel we can construct that at a very fast rate, install miles of line in much more expedited form, and like I mentioned before, very attractive to us to be able to work on top of the frost, not trying to dig through it, and be able to construct 12 months out of the year.
As opposed to 2 months? Tim, what about your thinking on the underground versus on poles?
Well, when we started in, we originally were going to go a light to light. So if we had overhead, that's where we were going to go overhead with our fiber. Where we had underground, we were going to go underground with it. But after we started studying everything, we had too many make-ready situations, meaning where we were going to have to go out and replace those vertical structures that we were just talking about there. Because if we were not going to go in the power space like Ryan did. We went in the comm space, and now we're below our lines, and you got to stay 30 inches below the power lines and all that type of stuff. So now all of a sudden you wind up with issues. Whether you're going across the road or across an approach or something, there's height limitations that you gotta be so many feet off the ground. Well, now you gotta change out those poles so you can get higher and all that, and that was just gonna cost us more money than going underground.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the audience? Alex?
Yeah, how much interface did you have with the cable companies and people who were providing services for areas that you eventually got into? Did you have problems with that? Did you work with them? How did you go about working or interfacing with these folks?
For the most part, well, I should say not for the most part, but we do not have any telephone cooperatives throughout our entire service territory. There are none. There are several independent owners, and of course there's all the nationals in that regard. And a little bit like unlike what Ryan did up there at Roseau, we had, and this is going back many years, we had at one time had talks with an independent telephone provider about doing some joint work together and providing some of these services together. And that whole thing just never worked out. Their philosophy was totally different than the co-op's philosophy. And I still had a couple of board members on the board that were on the board when we were going through those negotiations. And they just basically felt, well, we don't want to go down that road of trying to partner up with somebody who's, is a for-profit entity rather than a cooperative model. So that basically, made our decision as far as not working in a partnership with anybody locally. Not to say anything against Joe over here, we did have some talks about with working with CTC, But in the end, we just felt we would be better off just doing it ourselves. And the other thing I'm going to mention, like Brian mentioned, it was not a unanimous decision on our board either. That doesn't mean it's not workable, but you know, it's not always a slam dunk either.
You know, I was more concerned, I guess, with the existing cable systems that were there, if there were any, and how did you work through that problem? Because that is a problem in some areas.
In our situation, philosophy was a little bit different, driven by the board of directors and our feasibility study. I didn't get a lot into serving them 3 customers per mile. It cost a lot of money, and it really wasn't feasible for us to do this without a partner. So we chose the incumbents that were existing in our service territory, and we had a number of meetings with both of them. I'll say it's Garden Valley Telephone and Wickstrom. And we knew to make this work, we needed a partnership that they brought a lot of the expertise, the backbone type of thing that you call the backhaul, that type of thing, similar to what CTC does. That's kind of was our philosophy. So we actually really seeked out a partner in the incumbent and tried to utilize their infrastructure also.
Is Wickstrom the incumbent right in the area you're going to be serving, or they surround your area?
The situation where we are, Wickstrom would serve all around on 3 sides of us. Obviously, the Canadian border is to the north, so we're not serving that. But they would serve all of the areas, and the area geographically was CenturyLink, and that's who we're really going head to head with.
Joe, your discussions?
I guess from our perspective, we know who the providers, the existing providers are, and we just expect that we're going to be competing with them, and there's just going to be fair competition that occurs. And in some instances, we'll work with the community, and they'll be working with the incumbent providers and talking with them, and they'll make a determination to work with that incumbent provider versus bringing in a third provider sometimes, and that works out. But otherwise, it just becomes competition, and you have to expect that and know that you're going to be competing, and it's going to be a challenge sometimes, and sometimes more of a challenge than other times. And every community is different.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Mitch?
For Myron, how did you go about choosing the technology and the frequency that you use for your wireless?
Okay, the question was, how did we go about choosing our technology
The technology and the frequency?
and frequency? We worked with NRTC, the National Rural Telecommunications Cooperative, and they have several, several entities. They have Pulse Engineering is one of the entities that they own, along with Neonova and a couple others, but those are the main 2. And we strictly relied on them to do all of our engineering designing for our system. So it came down to their recommendations as to who we should work with and what products and all that type of stuff.
Which were the ones you developed?
It was, it's like Atran we're using, and Radwin as well. And then, I'm trying to think if I'm missing.
Is this unlicensed?
Right, it's an unlicensed spectrum as well.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Travis.
My message is for Tim. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why you chose to use private easement versus placing your facilities within the public right of way?
Well, I don't like the government having control over my assets. And when you put it in the right of way, they do, because when they do road construction or whatever, they get to tell you what's going to happen. You have additional costs at that point. all of our construction for all of our existing electric utility stuff is all in private easements. We don't go in the road right away unless we absolutely are forced into it for whatever reason. So knowing that we were going to be hanging this stuff originally, the idea was 70% was going to be on poles already anyway. So one of the things our attorney had told us was, according to, I'll say, the easements, bylaws, everything that we had in place, if we were only going to be using this, if we'd only put the backbone into our substations, we'd have been fine without getting additional easements. We could have gone on our existing poles, on our existing right-of-ways for underground, plowed it in, no problem. As soon as we made the decision that we were going to offer a broadband service to customers, he said we needed to get new easements that were going to allow us to do that. So we then had to make that decision. Okay, we're going to go out, we're going to talk to everybody and get the easement signed with the new language.
As cooperatives, when you think about your investment time frame in terms of getting your capital back, rate of return on that investment, can you share some of the co-op philosophy on that? A yes or no decision?
For us, and obviously I think everybody in the room knows that the co-op philosophy is different than a private investment. I talked a little bit about the company we had tried to work with. I mean, nothing against them. Their model's different. That's just plain facts. I mean, I don't begrudge them anything. I mean, their time frame, the way they look at things, their dollars, investments, totally different than what it is at the co-op world. At the co-op world, electric world, if we get a payback in 30 years on electric lines, we're thrilled. So, it's a totally different animal for us than what it is on the investments from some of the private entities out there.
So do you apply that same model 30 years on the telecom investment?
No, we didn't apply that same thing, particularly with the fixed wireless, because that technology, as everybody knows, technology in today's world can change so fast. So no, we don't have quite that same philosophy.
Do you have a path towards 100% fiber at any point, or are you just going to play it by ear?
That'll strictly be played by ear, and I'm sure that's a decision the guy after me is going to have to make.
Ryan and Joe, what about your investment?
I guess I would echo a lot of what Tim said there as far as we obviously lengthen our return on investment. We kind of modeled everything hopefully on a 10-year period. Obviously that's take rate and all these different components that go on in, and it is really a budgetary number. At the end of the day, if this is a very prosperous adventure, obviously the co-op world is, if we make too much money, we give it back to our members. So we hope that's the case, and time frame and financing is in place so that we can do that.
I would say 10 years. If we're looking at a project and if it's over 10 years, then we won't work with that project or consider it.
Okay, thank you. It's 11:50. I think, Mary, do you have a lunch announcement?
Yes. People are actually dishing up, so they're going to be coming in here to eat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're done. Thank you.